Welcome, welcome to the very first episode of the Unlocking Joy podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Vickers, and I am so excited for you to be here. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I am just overjoyed that you're here, and I thought it would be really fun as we get started on this journey of unlocking joy if you knew the background of how this podcast came to be and that it almost wasn't the Unlocking Joy podcast. I'd love to share that story with you. So thinking back, I really feel like this started with a book that I read at book club. This particular book that was chosen story is about this ancient proverb that there is a red thread of fate. And that red thread of fate, basically the idea behind that is that no matter where they are, two people can be connected by this red thread, regardless of place, time, or circumstances, that red thread will never break. And it will always make sure that they stay connected to each other and that they find each other. And I realized that this red thread of fate, this invisible red thread, is something that all of us have. We all have red thread stories in our lives. And reading this book, I just love that idea. We read some more books, another one called Mrs. Lincoln's Dressmaker. And I thought back to that ancient proverb of the red thread of fate and how that definitely played a part in Mrs. Lincoln's Dressmaker. The wheels are turning. A year later, I'm thinking, oh man, there's so many good stories that need to be told, but how do you even do that? How do you share it with everyone? And that then made me think, okay, I have had so many amazing conversations with friends, family, clients, and these conversations I come away from and I feel so uplifted. And I know that they were answers to prayers. Sometimes they were just what I needed to hear to make my day better and hopefully to make the other person's day better too. These things are swirling around in my head of the stories that we all have to tell, the red thread that's connecting us all, and having these great conversations with people in my life that I'm blessed to be surrounded by. I started seeing these ads for a boot camp to start a podcast. And I was like, okay, a podcast. Well, I've never done a podcast before. I've done lots of different things in my life, but I've never done a podcast. I'll check this out. I'll see if this is it. And during that podcast boot camp, it was amazing. And I will not say coincidental because I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that we are divinely led and guided in so many things that we do, especially as we're searching for those things. And some of the things that were said, I was like, that's me. She's speaking directly to me. That she's talking directly to my heart and my soul. And I knew that podcasting was a great way to share those conversations of enlightenment, of encouragement, of inspiration with other people. So I decided I was going to take this podcast course. I was going to do this. It was going to happen. I was going to start a podcast. That was a year ago. And the whole idea behind the podcast course was to launch your podcast in 2 to 3 months and get things going. Well, as you can tell, I did not launch my podcast in 2 to 3 months. And part of that was because I had this podcast that I was going to call The Invisible Red Thread. And that was the name I had thought it was going to be. And I knew that that was what was inspiring me from the beginning. And yet I felt like there was something else that needed to be added to that because yes, our connections and our stories and how we're all intertwined and the people that are meant to be in our life are placed there was part of it, but there was something deeper, there was something more. And I felt like I needed to share more than just that. And of course, the podcast could be called The Invisible Red Thread, but I really just kept asking for what is this supposed to be? What is this really ultimately about? And not only for me, but for the people that are listening, because this is a passion project for me. This is something that I really am putting out into the world, not just for myself, but for anyone else that might need to hear it, that anyone else that might have something going on in their life that maybe this is going to be an answer for them in that moment that they're struggling. And I really wanted to connect with people on that deeper level, because that's where I really find joy in my life is when I connect with someone on that heart level. And I just love that. I love that connection. I love talking to people on that level. And so I just kept thinking, okay, what should this be? What should this be? Changed it to a couple different things and polling all of my family and friends around me. What do you guys think of this name? I had been thinking about what is the purpose of our life? What have I been searching for my whole life? What is it that I know other people are searching for and want in their life? And that's when joy came to me, because that really is the purpose of our life, right? We want to have ultimate joy. We want to have this wonderful feeling of joyfulness and letting go of all of the other things that steal our joy and that keep us from joy. And so I really wanted joy to be a part of the title. So I had joy. I had joy, and I knew that that needed to be part of it, but I didn't know what the other part was going to be. And I was driving to a women's event at my church, and as I was driving, I was talking out loud, having a conversation with the Lord. And I was just like, what is the name of this podcast supposed to be? And as I was driving to this event, I realized, unlock. It's inside of us. It's already there. Unlocking joy. That's it. So unlocking joy it is. And you know that it's really meant to be when you go and you look at all the other podcasts out there, and there is no Unlocking Joy podcast. There's some people that are talking about unlocking joy, but there was no podcast titled Unlocking Joy. And I knew that that was exactly the podcast name I was supposed to have and the podcast that I was supposed to create. So the name was done. And I knew that the Red Thread stories would be part of that. But like I said, I knew that there was other things that I wanted to talk about and other things that were really important. And so as I was pondering and trying to figure out what is the name of this podcast going to be, I came across a TED Talk from Brene Brown, and she was talking about wholehearted living. And that was so many people that she had interviewed in her research of shame and vulnerability, that really what they wanted to get to was wholehearted living, and living with connection to other people, living with courage in their life, living with belonging, living in a world where they feel loved and needed. And I realized that's exactly the subjects that I want to uncover, because truly unlocking joy in our life, we have to feel that deep connection, right? We have to feel like we are loved, that we are needed. We have to have the courage to be ourselves around everyone that we are with, so they can get to know us, so they can have that deep connection with us. And we have to have compassion for other people. And, really all of that together made this beautiful gift that is the Unlocking Joy podcast and what we're going to be exploring together. So that is the background story of how this podcast came to be and how it almost wasn't the Unlocking Joy podcast. I am so honored that you would take the time to share with me and invite me into your homes, into your cars, wherever you're listening. And if you feel like this is a podcast that your friends are going to enjoy, I would love for you to share it with them. I would love for you to tell people about it. We're going to be doing a lot of really fun giveaways on Instagram. So you can go to my website, SamanthaVickers.com, and find my social media there, or you can go to Instagram and you can find me at SamIamVickers. As always, I would love for you to leave a rating and review for the podcast. I would greatly appreciate it. And I cannot wait for you guys to hear the episodes that I have for you. I'm going to have a new episode every week, interviewing some amazing human beings, giving us some insight in unlocking that joy in our life and living with courage, living with compassion, and definitely living with connection to those around us. Cannot wait for next week to talk to you again.